Test of the City of Polacca audio system.
looking to see for the invocation. He's not here. What would you like? What would you like to do? Just move it on, like start and move around that and wait and see if it tunes in.
You can assign someone if you want.
Yeah, I know, I could do that. I just didn't want to think somebody. Yeah, well, we'll just start and we'll see if he tunes in by then. If not, somebody will have to volunteer. Okay, thank you, everybody. This is the City of Polacca Historic Preservation Board meeting, on January 6th, and I'm calling the meeting to order. We're going to go right to the Pledge of Allegiance. Linda, would you like to lead the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chris Hollister. Yes. Laura Schonberger. Robbie Correa.
Present.
Linda Little Craybill.
Present.
And Elizabeth Van Rensburg. And we have Larry Beaton joining us via virtual telecommunications.
Present.
Okay, again, would anybody like to lead the invocation? I guess I was supposed to say, well, you must. Larry, could you please lead the invocation?
Sure. Our Heavenly Father, we thank you for all the gifts that you give to us as individuals and to our community. Help guide us in this board's deliberation to do the right and just things for the citizens of Putnam County to make our community better than it is today. In his holy name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you.
You're welcome.
We're going to have the swearing in ceremony for Mr. Eldred Westbury.
Mr. Westbury, would you like a Bible, sir? Mr. Westbury, if you would, raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Eldred Westbury,
I, Eldred Westbury,
a Historic Preservation Board appointee
Preservation Board appointee
of the Polacca City Commission,
of the Polacca City Commission,
do solemnly swear or affirm
do solemnly swear and affirm
that I will faithfully perform
that I will faithfully perform
the duties of my appointed office
the duties of my appointed office
and will support and honor,
and will support and honor
to the best of my ability,
to the best of my ability
all applicable laws of the state of Florida,
of the state of Florida,
Putnam County,
Putnam County,
the city of Polacca,
the city of Polacca,
as well as the beliefs,
as well as the beliefs,
vision,
vision,
mission,
mission,
policies,
policy,
procedures,
procedures,
code of ethics,
code of ethics,
and code of conduct
and code of conduct
of the City of Polacca Historic Preservation Board.
of the City of Palatka Historical Preservation Board.
I hereby, through this oath,
I hereby, through this oath,
affirm that I will perform the duties
affirm that I will perform the duties
of this public trust
of this public trust
in a fair,
in a fair,
equitable,
equitable,
and ethical
and ethical manner
befitting the dignity
befitting the dignity
and responsibilities of the office.
and the responsibility of the office. My pleasure. Thank you. Okay, thank you.
And welcome to the Historic Preservation Board.
Thus far, it's a pleasure.
Give it time. Okay, it's also that time again for the selection of a chair for the Historic Preservation Board. Do we want to nominate anybody for that role?
I move we continue with Robbie as being president or chairman.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, I think. And now the selection of a vice chair. Do we have a nomination? We're consistent if nothing else. Okay. We have a nomination. Do we have a second? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
And this will be the last year I'm going to do it. I think I've done it long enough. And after this, somebody else needs to volunteer, or I'll volunteer them, whatever comes first. But thank you. I'm going to read the appeal procedure. Notices any person aggrieved by a decision of the board may within 15 days thereafter apply to the city commission for review of the board's decision. Such application must be filed with the city manager in writing. Objections by property owners to National Register nominations must be notarized to be included in the record, section 54-4-74, Polacca Municipal Code. Any person wishing to appeal a decision, any decision rather, made by the Historic Preservation Board with respect to any matter considered at such meeting will need a record of the proceedings, and for such purpose may need to ensure that a verbatim record of the procedure is made at the applicant's expense, which record includes the testimony and evidence upon which the appeal is to be based. Florida Statute 286.105. Does anybody have any ex parte conversation or communication to disclose? Thank you. Has everybody had an opportunity to read the November 4 meeting minutes?
Yes, motion to approve as written.
Okay, motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, December 2nd meetings, minutes, gosh, Rob. Have we had an opportunity to read those as well, review those? Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve as
Okay.
written.
Motion, second? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, I'm opening the floor to public comments, just in general. Does anybody have any public comments? Please limit it to 3 minutes. Okay, closing public comments. We're going to go into our regular business. Case HPB 21-30, request for certificate of appropriateness for plumbing and paving restorations, continued from December 2nd meeting. Applicant is Timothy Green, who's with us via Zoom. And the location is 114 South 3rd Street, Palatka. Ms. Walsh?
Thank you, Ms. Chair. As you noted, this is a continuation of a previous application. Mr. Green has also added several components that he would like to have reviewed. For expediency, I can begin at the additional portion, or I can review the entire list of exhibits.
I think we can begin with what we left off with last time. Do you want to do the whole, let's do the entire thing for the sake of expediency.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right. I will briefly go over this, and I'm sure Mr. Green will have some things that he may wish to address. So Exhibit 1. Sunny, would you go to the exhibits, please? Thank you, ma'am. Exhibit 1 is a box awning above the entrance door. He has photographs of the existing location and style or whatever is there currently. I'm not sure if there's an awning that used to be there, and the proposed awning. The photograph on the lower left is a comparable example of what he would like to install there. In Exhibit 2, he describes some of the pavers and their location that have already been added. further in Exhibit 2, and it would be on page 8 of your staff report. That shows more brick pavers at the rear of the building. I'm sorry, the Oak Street side of the building. Exhibit 3. He describes railings that he would like to install on the exterior floors. I'm sorry, the exterior stairs on the second floor and the first floor walkways. And there's examples there shown of the style of railings that he would like to add. Exhibit 4 is the addition of doors. There would be 2 commercial double doors on the alleyway side of the building, and they would be standard aluminum and glass double doors, commercial doors, on the north side of the building facing the existing alleyway. On page 11, there's an example of the style of doors. Exhibit 5 is the installation of 2 wooden double doors at the rear of the building on the second floor balcony. An example of those doors, or the proposed doors that have already been purchased, are shown on page 13. As well as page 14. In Exhibit 6, there's proposed skylights for the 1-story flat roof. In Exhibit 7 proposes replacement windows on the second floor facing 3rd Street. There's also a couple of diagrams that show where the windows would go. And on page 19, there's an example of the window. Exhibit 8 is for a concession takeout window in an existing window space on the side adjacent to 3rd Street. An example of that window is shown on page 21 as part of Exhibit 8. In Exhibit 9, there's a diagram of where proposed bathrooms would go on the second floor on the alleyway side of the building. Exhibit 9 on page 24 also shows the location of the proposed addition. Exhibit 10 also shows that proposed a proposed addition without railings. And on page 26 is an example of the railings that would go up on that second floor restroom addition. That's where we left off last time.
Okay.
Now Exhibit 11 begins the new portion of items to be addressed. That starts on page 27. Mr. Green is proposing to replace an old shingle roof with new metal roof on the rear portion of the building that is not part of the main 2-story building.
Mhm.
It is identical in material and color as the existing roof installed on the 2-story building prior to his ownership of the building. Exhibit 12 shows the 7-foot tall fence that has been constructed around the future dumpster area in the alleyway off of Oak Street. Some of these items, as mentioned before, have already been installed, such as this fence. Exhibit 13 shows the placement location for split unit air conditioning units that will be wall mounted on the exterior of the two-story building facing the alleyway. Page 30 and 31 shows examples of the air conditioning units. Exhibit 14 shows the location of an exhaust fan installation. There's another picture of the air conditioning units, but I don't think that that's what is supposed to go on that page. The exhaust fan example is shown on page 34.
Is the exhaust fan in the rear of the building or the side?
On the alleyway. I think
On the
she said.
alleyway side? Okay.
Yes. Exhibit 15 shows existing and a proposed chimney fan that would go on the brick chimney at the rear of the building that is adjacent to the tax collector's office. Exhibit 16 on page 37 shows windows that would go on the first floor of the two-story building that face the rear courtyard, along with a shutter that would go over those buildings. Exhibit 17 on page 38 proposes signage along the rear wall of the building. Exhibit 18 shows proposed signage at the front of the building on the existing ground pole sign. I should say existing pole sign, not ground pole sign. One thing I'd like to note about this signage is that it would have to go through a separate permitting process, which would then allow me to receive more detail on what's proposed and make sure it conforms with the code. Okay. Exhibit 19 on page 40 again shows the rear exhaust fan. I'm sorry, it shows the exhaust fan, but also the electrical meter boxes that would be located on that same wall. I will answer questions that you may have, but I would.
Some of these do not apply to us,
Like,
would they?
Our code says that any alteration, Any
to the
alteration.
exterior, so they all do, because they're
Okay,
all,
because in the past, we have allowed stuff on the back that's not seen by the public.
well, it will still be seen by the public because that courtyard's good. Anyway, any alteration of the exterior is still
Okay, all right. Well, I
before
just,
this board for review.
any alteration of the interior or exterior of the building.
Okay, so that's a lot of items. So who has questions of Ms. Walsh? Anybody? We still processing? It's a lot.
It is a lot of
It's a
information.
lot of information.
are there any here that go against any of the codes, the changes that you have noted?
When you say go against the code,
That don't apply to historic preservation that should,
many of the new items are utilities
Mhm,
that, I mean, there are things that are required
right.
in the
that's what-
construction of such a use for the building. I think that the board's purview would be about the materials being used. Some of it is again, it's required
uh-huh.
for the use of the building,
Yeah.
like the exhaust fan hoods and the chimney fan and
Well,
things
that's
like
what,
that.
yeah. I was
Electrical
thinking Some of
boxes, I
these
mean-
are probably things we can't change, but because of the need for the type of building it is.
Right, right.
And a lot of that has to do with the location of those more utilitarian
Yeah.
that if they are less visible to the, from the street in that case.
Right.
Um,
But some of the things,
Understanding that for the operation of this business and for current use, that you have to weigh some of these things out.
the things that would fall under your purview would be the signage, the doors, the windows,
Yeah, that's what I thought, yeah.
things,
some of
paint,
this other stuff
colors,
that-
yeah, roofing
Since it's
materials.
commercial, runs a little different than quote residential.
But again, we're still supposed to retain as much of the historic integrity of the building as we can, again, balancing that with the use,
Yeah.
commercial use.
Yeah.
So I guess the best way to do this is to start at the beginning and go through some of these, or are there any things we feel comfortable pulling for approval to come back to the others? I have a couple of specifics. I don't know if we want to let Mr. Green speak first, or what the board's pleasure is.
Yeah, I started off.
Mr. Green, would you like to say anything? To
No,
us, explain
I
anything
think-
further?
I think I'll hold comment to the end, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay,
Madam Chair,
yes,
I had a couple of questions for Mr.
Sure.
Green.
okay.
I'm not familiar with the railing to the second floor at the rear of the building. Is the railing that you're proposing, the new railing that you're proposing, is it of similar appearance and construction as the existing?
Thank you for the question. The original railings throughout the building were just plumber pipe installed probably 1960s or 70s. Not the right height for code. A lot of open space for someone to slip through if it was a child. Not a good idea to have up there. So, but to answer your question regarding front and back look, the front will look consistent with the architecture of that building, of the let's say more Art Deco-y style. But the rear of the building actually has a very different appearance because it doesn't have the stairwell, which is really the most sort of iconic aspect of the Art Deco. I mean, if you took the stairs off the building, it wouldn't look Art Deco. So instead, it's just more or less a cover over to try and make the railing look both, I don't know what the right word is, more aesthetically pleasing and safer. So it's just, I've used, well, we want to try and convert those railings. There's just a stairwell railing. It still remains the way it is. And those top railings, we want to try and hide. So we haven't completed that. I don't know really what direction that's going to go, to be quite honest. But I don't expect the rear railings, excuse me, tongue twister, to match the front railings. They're just completely different architectural styles between the back of the building and the front.
Okay, thank you. The serving window that's going to be installed in the front,
Yes.
what are you proposing for the glass for that? In the image, in the packet, it looked reflective.
No, it'll be clear glass. People
Okay,
generally want to see inside, and you want to be able to see your clients outside. It'll be clear glass.
okay,
I'm just flipping. I can't remember offhand which exhibit that is, but to answer your question, it's clear.
okay, super, thank you. All right, Madam Chair, that's all I had at this time.
Okay, anybody else?
I'd just like to say the railings in the back serve a completely different purpose than the railings going up the stairs.
But we're not really reviewing the railings in the back because he hasn't made that decision. Is that a future
That's true.
at this
Well,
point?
Well, the reason that I asked about that, about the railing in the back is, isn't part of this project putting doors on that second floor landing to be able to go out to that
Yes,
porch?
There are doors there.
it is.
Yes, I mean, the doors are part of the plan.
Okay. So if you're going to go ahead and do that, I assume at some point you're going to upgrade the railings at the.
Well, I mean, some work to keep them stable and look nice have been done. I mean, there's some wood added to it, and I'll probably stick with that design. but it was not part of this plan. This was a pretty full application, but I'm happy to come back
Sure.
and update that part.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yes.
Okay, anybody else before I say anything? I guess because this is a lot to process, there's a lot on this application. My first concern that sticks out for me, Mr. Green, is the current historic elk sign that's iconic to downtown. Are you planning to wrap that? I see what you're proposing. How will that be affixed to the sign?
I'm not aware that it's a historic sign, so I was gonna probably donate it to the Elks Club and just put a new sign in.
Well, okay, or the Historical Society or Revitalize Historic Palatka. I just would like to see it stay in the city if you're going to take it down. And then what is
Yeah,
the
I have no
process to
problem.
take it
If
down?
if you want the sign, you're welcome to the sign.
What is the process for removal of a sign on a historic property?
Just with your approval.
Okay. Anybody else's thoughts on that?
No, I agree that if he's gonna donate it to the Historical Society or,
But at least if he donates it, go back someday. where it belongs. But at any rate, okay, well, I'm digressing. Anything else? This is just, again, a lot. How do we feel about the other items on this package? Anybody else have anything? On the second level? Which way, there's again.
Well, I think they were facing front. over the stairway.
Okay, so yeah, they were on the second level in the front.
you've got two sets of them.
We talked about it at the last meeting.
Her microphone isn't on. I can't hear what she's
Can't
saying.
hear. Can't hear.
You gotta put your mic on, yeah.
I was just wondering if we had ever resolved the question about the windows. We talked about it at the last meeting as to what, there were going to be vinyl or metal windows and what part of that is going to show or not show.
So they are here in Exhibit 7. What Mr. Green is proposing is in Exhibit 7 on page 16 in the packet. If you look at that, everyone, please. So that is what he's proposing in the packet. I don't believe they're wood. I believe vinyl,
Says they're
as
vinyl,
far as
yeah.
I can tell from what's in the package. Yep. And the back page gives you more detail about the windows specifically, the next page. Rather.
I think there were also, both sets of the windows. Yeah.
I'm partial to jealousy to windows, though. So that's all in the eye of the beholder, I suppose. But yes, I understand for efficiency purposes. Okay.
I just remembered that we were discussing the
Yeah.
material.
Yes, and we were discussing that for another request as well. The ones that are currently there, in fairness to be somewhat of a devil's advocate, the ones that are in there now are aluminum, metal, jalousie type windows too. They're not like they're wood framed.
The ones on page 19, it says primed wood double hung windows.
Yeah, but we're talking about the front above the
Yeah.
stairway, not,
Are those going to be wooden too?
the ones above the
Oh,
stairway
no,
are
it says
not.
Vinyl.
It says vinyl, they are not. But the existing windows are not as well.
So are you saying since we have,
I'm not saying anything, I'm
Metal,
just
we can
stating
do
what it is.
vinyl.
I'm not making a call on that.
no,
I'm just
I'm
stating
just
that.
saying,
Yeah.
since- as
But-
a thought process,
Yeah.
since
I guess if you're
Florida
asking my
windows are
thought
metal,
process,
it would be okay to do the vinyl.
those may or may not be original windows that are there now, depending on when that,
No,
you know,
they were- they
that-
were original.
that porch was enclosed, depending on when
I
that porch
think
was
they're
enclosed.
original.
They could very well be original if that porch was open
Right, yeah.
until the 50s, 60s. I
Yeah,
mean, so that's
since-
possible.
Since 1946, since I saw them, they were there.
Right, but I don't know if the porch was enclosed then. or open. At any rate, we
Yeah.
don't know if those are original or not, but
Mhm.
again, they are already aluminum metal frame.
Well, and we are talking about a building that is non-conforming. And we're talking about, building code as it relates
Right.
to a commercial
A commercial
building.
structure.
Really,
yes.
our purview only goes that far.
Yes.
We can make recommendations, like I'd love to make the recommendation that we see that Elks Lodge sign restored and it stay on the property
Me
with a
too.
clever little plaque attached to it, explaining
It's
what the
history.
property was for
Right,
so
I
many
agree.
years.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so here we are. We're going to need a a motion that's very inclusive of everything discussed. And we can look at staff recommendations. Do we have them?
Yes, ma'am, it's on the,
Is it at the beginning? Is that right?
Has there been any objection to any of the exhibits?
Can I speak?
You sure can.
All right, so it sounds like we've reached a conclusion in discussing the specific exhibits. My only objection to staff recommendation is line number 1, ensuring all external and internal materials and designs are consistent with historic materials used. And I object on that because the building is non-conforming, non-historic, and this seems to be an extension of authority that's gone beyond the pale for any other historical structure, or rather non-historical structure, non-contributing building in the city of Polacca. So whether or not we agree today on my proposed projects, if the decision is to approve the COA, including that first line, I will appeal it.
Well, since you've already kind of given us a threat, Mr. Green, but the fact of the matter, I mean, we've gone back and forth on whether it may be considered somewhat non-contributing, but it is a historical building in its own right, because when the Florida Master Site file was actually done in 83, it wasn't 50 years old yet, quite 50 years old yet, which is why it wasn't considered historic at that point in time. Since then, the time has gone by, and it is a particular type of architecture that's very, the city has very few of that type of architecture. We already lost the Art Moderne apartments across the street, or in the next block rather. So, we can go back and forth as to whether it's contributing.
I don't plan to go back and forth. I'm just making it very
I
clear.
know, but you're already telling us you're going to appeal, so it's kind of frustrating for us as a board as well.
I'm just going to appeal that part if it's included.
Mr. Westbury? Yeah, is he, the mic on? I didn't hear.
your microphone is not on. If you're going to speak, you have to turn your microphone on.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
there's a question that comes to mind, backing up slightly to the skylight on the roof with the new wind codes. I know just enough about it to be dangerous. I don't know the specifics, but the wind codes on the skylight may have to go back to get approval.
They will have to go before the county building official. He will have to get that process permitted. That's not within our purview, but he does, that has to happen. Yeah, but it's not for us to decide. That's for the building official to decide. Yeah. So anyway, with all that said, that exchange, we are here to only make those determinations about any alterations to the exterior of the building and to retain as much historic integrity about the building as we can within the parameters of realizing it's a commercial building and this is 2022. All that said, does anybody have a motion? And if we want to separate something out specifically and address that in a separate motion, that is fine as well.
The only one in question, I think, is the windows on the front. Am I not?
And the
Second.
sign, I mean, I
And the
think the
sign.
elk sign is the other point of discussion, but at least so far as this conversation has grown to this point, I don't know
But
that
we
there's.
have, we don't have any say so about the sign at the moment because he's not really presented.
Yes, he has. It's in here. Have you looked at the packet? It's in the
Yeah.
packet.
Okay, okay, you mean the one that he has drawn out?
The elk sign that's there
Yeah.
currently.
Okay, I guess is there a discussion as to, do we make a recommendation that he find a place that it can be?
Well, no, it
Yeah.
either stays where it is or it doesn't, sort of thing. I mean, it's not, you wouldn't move it from its current location unless you were taking it out completely. Ms. Van Rensburg expressed it, and which is my concern, that it really is original to the building, and it would serve the community, in my opinion, better if there was a kiosk, a little kiosk or plaque explaining its history versus taking it down. I understand also, though, he wants to have a business there and open up a business and have a sign there. Is there a way to do it without being a competitive sign situation and make it design it
Yeah.
so that it does blend in
Oh.
keeping?
Can you make recommendations?
We can, but so my question to the group is, how do we want to proceed? Do we want to make a motion for the bulk of it, pull out the sign, pull out something else, and do something differently with that in terms of a recommendation or a motion? But there is a lot of information here, and to move forward, and maybe in this meeting tonight, we have to come up with some, at least for those things that we're all comfortable with, maybe we can make a motion to approve those and then come back to any items that we feel we need to discuss further.
Well, if there was some way that he could take the sign, take it down, but put it on the building with a plaque underneath it explaining it.
He offered to give it to the Elks. I think that'd be the best route to go. But
There
then
is no
decide-
elks here.
There
I
is.
mean, there is no elks anymore.
Oh, boy.
No, so but again, once you remove something from its original site, it does lose some of its historic integrity and value. So that's, I guess, what we're grappling
Well,
with
that's
on the
right.
sign. But let's put the sign over here for a minute.
Yeah.
Let's see if we can get through some of the other things.
Yeah.
I make a motion to approve the entire package with leaving the sign out if you wish to do something different about that, or with the understanding that he would do an appropriate thing with the sign.
Well, we'd have to specify what that appropriate thing might be.
Bring it back.
So let's, again, if you want to make a motion that doesn't include approval of the sign, is that what you're saying? And you're going to make a recommendation based on staff recommendations?
Yes.
Okay, can you say that again, Laura, for Sunny? Because that was pretty confusing. Okay, you recommend approval of,
Of the staff recommendation for all of the exhibits that we've been presented with the exception of working something out about the sign at a future time with Mr. Green.
I would be willing to second that if it was specifically mentioned that staff recommendation 1 is to ensure all external and internal materials and designs are consistent with historic materials used.
okay, so basically that to refine the motion, can we do that? Are we clear on? So basically you did say that the motion was to follow staff recommendations in regard to this case, HPB 21-30, with the following conditions, 1 and 2, with the exception of the sign. We approve the rest of the packet. Correct? Correct? Okay.
I would second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. And do we want Mr. Green to come back with the sign, about the sign, or do we want to make a motion for the sign specific, separate?
Doesn't it have to go before somebody, another board or
Well,
somebody?
for the historic sign, we're talking about the historic elk sign specifically. The other signs, any signs that are going to be added, he's going to have to go
Okay,
Right.
okay.
before the planning board and et cetera.
My only other question is, as relates to the future, exterior painting. Is that something that nowadays would come back before this board?
According to the code, yes.
Okay, so we can look forward to that.
We can, and some of it's already been done in advance. The addition was painted green some time ago, since Mr. Green has owned it. Anyway, okay, so we're looking forward to that. But the sign, what do we want, the elk sign specifically?
I'd like to move that we recommend or require Mr. Green to come back with variations of what he could do to keep the Elks Club sign for historic with a way to show the importance of it to the building, connection to the building.
Okay. Did we get that motion? Motion to have Mr. Green return to discuss his plan for the sign that ensures it remains a historic part of downtown in the Elks Building?
I do have just a point of clarification on that motion. Is
Okay.
it to a time and date certain, or is it to an unknown period in the future? Are we going to give him a time and date to return?
Well, before he removes it.
Well, I think we need to set a time and date certain. That's my thought. I'm thinking by the next meeting, but I don't know what anybody thinks is reasonable. It's not a hard thing, and I'm sure the Historical Society would support, or some other organization, funding of a kiosk if he needed help with that, so that the financial burden didn't fall on him. RHP would consider that as well.
Okay, I'll refund it to no later than the March meeting. Gives him 2 months to.
That's fine, as long as nothing happens to it in the interim.
For the record, the March meeting's the first Thursday in March.
Yes,
Looking at my calendar, I believe it's March 3rd at 4.
okay. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I would second that.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Moving on to general staff comments. Do we have anything else, Ms. Walsh? There's a person we don't know in the room.
My apologies. I should be I shouldn't be remiss in my duties. We have Miss Miranda Zadarico, who goes by the name Randy,
Okay.
as our new planning clerk.
Oh, nice.
So
Okay.
you'll be seeing more of her
Okay.
at your meetings. Well, that's true. You can't.
I
She did stand up. Can you see her still?
understand. I can relate. Well, welcome.
Yes, welcome aboard.
Anything else, Ms. Walsh?
No, ma'am. I'm
Okay.
done.
Do we have any board comments or any other concerns from the board?
Madam Chair.
Yes, Mr. Beaton, excuse me. I'm so used to calling him just Larry that it's hard to remember last names. Go ahead.
That's quite all right. At a previous board meeting, maybe a couple of years ago, we had a discussion with the then planning director about the city of Palatka drafting a grant application with the state for a comprehensive new survey of historic properties in the city of Palatka. The original survey that was done in the early 80s only included the historic South and North Historic District, with some exceptions. There were a few other historic buildings that were included in that, but almost nothing in Polacca Heights and in some of the area, the fill-in area in between, and some of the commercial buildings in downtown. So since it's not an agenda item, I guess we might have to defer to Ms. Thomas regarding this, but I would like for a motion to be put forward to ask staff to investigate the possibility of getting a state grant to do a new survey of the city of Polacca, a comprehensive survey. I would be glad, and I'm sure other members of the board would be glad to assist in, drafting something that we think would be appropriate to make that request for a grant.
Certified local government program does provide funding for site survey grants, for historic site survey grants. And the window might be opening soon for the grant applications. It usually closes in early June. It's worth looking into, to call the Shopo's office and see if they can give us more information.
So is it appropriate for me to put forward a motion, or will that need to wait till the next meeting until it's an agenda item?
Ms. Thomas, can you answer that,
Good
please?
afternoon. Mr. Beaton, you can just do a set of a motion, direct staff, Ms. Walsh, to bring that back a report and presentation for the next meeting
Okay, all right.
regarding that matter.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Madam Chair, I'd like to propose a motion.
Okay, go ahead.
I propose that the Historic Preservation Board request city staff to report at our next regular meeting about the possibility of applying for a state grant to do a new historic survey of structures within the city of Palatka.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Anything else, Mr. Beaton?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Does anybody else on the board have any?
Yeah, quick
Topics or
comment. Looking through all this stuff, I see that this gentleman was able to find wood double hung windows.
Yes,
Um,
they do exist. They
I
generally
know.
cost more, but they do exist.
I know, we should,
You know, keep that as a resource for the
Right.
future. It's worth, yeah, to suggest to people, yes.
another observation I've made while walking the dog is a house around the corner on Madison has vinyl windows. They've replaced the doors. Has that house come to this board asking permission?
I don't, you gotta, do you know the
It's-
specific address?
It's across from 514. There's no address on it.
Oh.
Madison.
I'm not sure which, across from 514, do you know
It-
which one?
Basically, we're looking at the property on Madison that is next to the Episcopal Church, one-story L-shaped building. It is between
Okay.
that and James Douglas's property on the corner of Madison and Third. So I would tell you that it is catty corner to the old Azalea House Inn and directly across the street from
It's not Brianna's house. is it?
yes, it is Brianna's house.
Okay.
But I apologize. I can't tell you the address off the top of my head.
I know who owns it, but I can't tell you the address either. Can look it up. Yeah. On the property appraiser's website.
And in the years that I have been on the board, I don't believe that that property has ever come before us.
No, it has not since she's owned it.
I'm sure we'd love to talk about it. It's a
Well,
great property.
They're doing, it looks good, but they've taken out the existing door and put what they wanted in. They replaced all the wood windows with vinyl. I know when they first got the house, it was a shell inside. All the walls had been stripped, no wiring, no plumbing. Have they ever, I'm just wondering, sought permits to do any of this or?
I don't honestly know. I mean, that's something that you'd have to research.
Do you have the
Yeah,
full
I-
name of the owner?
I know, I'll tell you off on the side.
Okay, thank
I'd
you.
rather Make a public announcement.
Okay, just wondering. Because they put all new vinyl windows in.
Yeah.
Just something I noticed walking the dog.
I think the other piece of this is somewhat, and it's just a discussion on the board's part, and not that we are going to do it, but there's a lack of knowledge and education, I think, of many people that live in both districts as to what they would have to come before this board for and what they don't have to. I just, as a Realtor, I can tell you, I explain it to people. I don't think a lot of Realtors know, and so they don't. So there's a lot of people that just don't have that. I'd like to give them the benefit of the doubt before you come down on them, but I think a lot of them don't. Now, that person does, frankly. I know she does, but other people do not.
Is there some way that this board could do a letter to all of the historic homes in both districts explaining what any additions or corrections or restorations that need to be done, that they need to come before the board?
Yes.
I move that they do that.
I don't know if we need a motion or not. Do we need a motion? I
Well,
don't know.
was covering my bases.
I think that would be incredibly helpful. I also feel that it's something that can't just be done once.
Oh, no.
No.
It's something that
ongoing.
needs to be kind of followed up on, and perhaps a, welcome to Polacca package for new homeowners, explaining what the purpose is of this board. Because I can completely commiserate with how I think Mr. Hollister might be feeling as a new board member, which is why do we have to wait for people to come to us when, by the same token, as they come to us, they can point out lots of examples of people who didn't bother coming to us, and they're not having to do this, that, and the other.
Right.
So it's frustrated me for as many years as I've been on this board.
Well, I
Yeah.
think because the board did not really have a place or a say-so until what, 1983. A
But
lot of
this has happened
prior
well
to
after
that.
that, because certainly most of us have not been
Well,
on
it
this
has
board
been,
since
yeah,
then. I'm not even here.
Yeah.
And I think it's multi-stepped. You have to provide the education information, but then there's that kind of follow-up and enforcement, and that's another piece that's kind of lax because of resources in the city. I'm not finding fault with anybody, it's just the reality of it.
In addition to sending it, if you send it to all the real estate offices for agents to know, so that people listing and selling.
Well, I think existing property owners, and also there has to be a way to track new people coming into our area. I mean, I can tell you just from personal experience, when I was the president of the neighborhood association, I can't tell you how many times I would get calls from property owners asking if it was okay with me if they put in a swimming pool. So there is definitely misinformation out there, and there's confusion. But there's also, unfortunately, if I don't have to ask permission, if I can beg forgiveness later, but maybe I won't even have to if nobody notices.
Right. I can tell you that since I have been here, I have been working very closely with Putnam County Building and Permitting. Whenever something comes through within a historic district, the county staff sends it to me.
Which is good,
Oh,
because
good.
that piece was missing for a long time, that connection.
So many of the cases that you hear are cases where you have the dissimilar things that don't qualify for staff approval.
Mm.
So I've made a number of staff approval COAs for routine things, air conditioning units, routine things that don't alter the architectural or
Okay.
characteristics of the buildings. Like for like roof replacements. There was a property, I want to say it was on the street north of, please forgive me, I'm still
That's okay.
learning the roads.
That's good.
It's in the North Historic District, and it's north of Main Street. It's a small house where they were doing doors and windows that
Well,
were.
would be Madison.
You think it's, right, it might be Madison. Okay, so, anyway, it was a staff approval because they were replacing a front porch that had deteriorated and rotted out. So it was just something, and they were doing the same thing, putting
Same
back the same
footprint,
thing.
same
Yeah.
design.
Yeah.
So I didn't bring that before you, but
Yeah.
the things that come before you are generated sometimes through that process that we've instituted.
I think that if there is new conversation and agreement between your office and, the building department, that's beyond good in my book. That's awesome.
Thank you.
It is, because it really is needed, and with that, the county being responsible for that piece, that communication has to be there.
Right.
Okay, do we have anything else, folks?
I would give you a motion to adjourn. Oh.
We got a double motion to adjourn. I
second.
guess you want, thank
On-
you.
On either end.
Thank you, everyone.